Welcome, everyone. Good to be with you. Yes. Why don't we do this? Why don't we start by closing down our eyes, feeling into our bodies. And I invite you to feel into the warm, loving, innocent presence of your hearts. And so I hope for most everyone, as we breathe deeply together, as we commune together, as we invite awareness to awaken in the space of the heart, you feel into your heart. That this makes you smile. Just knowing that I am good. And so you're feeling into the body, connecting to your innocence, your innate goodness. Okay, just getting out of the head, out of the thinking mind. Just feeling into your heart. This quiet, innate goodness that you are. And for some of us, like sometimes we forget. And if you have forgotten that you are good, that you are beautiful, that you are innocent, I invite you to smile and say, oh yes, I have forgotten. And so we're returning to the space of the heart. Just feeling the quiet goodness, the warmth, the aliveness of your presence. And for those of you who have lots of resistance, please just feel your warmth, your aliveness. We don't have to argue about you being innately good. Just feeling the warm goodness, feeling of being alive. And this aliveness is good, it's innocent, it's pure. As we're breathing in and breathing out, just softening and opening, letting go of any of the personalities, definitions of who and what you are, and stepping into reality. In reality, when you feel into your heart, you may notice there's bits of pain or heartache here, numbness, and all kinds of difficulties. But if you descend under any of your emotional experience, under any patterns of holding or resistance, you quickly come into contact with that which is good, that which is true, that which is beautiful. So please, softening, opening, trusting, just touching into the innate goodness of your heart. You're not going to find this if you're in your head or if you're in your personality. You find this through joining me in the space of the heart. And so then I invite you to take a deep breath and to descend even deeper down to the lower hara, the lower belly, finding your core. It's this quiet presence of strength, of power, of Buddha nature. It's this quiet, noble strength. Deep in your lower belly, quiet strength which has outlived every emotional pain and turmoil of your life. Quiet strength, which again is good, just pure, just timeless and eternal. So opening in the heart, opening in the belly, breathing deeply and fully, knowing ourselves from the direct experience of essence, our essential nature. Not knowing oneself from mind or emotional nature, collection of memories from the past, but knowing yourself as this presence of aliveness, strength, of power, this gentle presence of love. Okay, so beautiful. So welcome to Satsang. You can open your eyes if you like. You can keep them closed if you like. Someone wrote me a very interesting question tonight that I thought I would just jump right into. It's a question I've thought about a lot myself. This is from Tracy. Tracy writes, "Hi, Craig. What is your advice to someone who wishes to successfully escape the relentless evil intentions and actions of certain confused, and confused is in quotes, individuals who've been continuously preying upon them?" Yeah, so basically how to get away from someone who's preying upon you. And Tracy writes that this person has evil intentions. Boy, what what an interesting way to start the evening. I've had this question often, especially when I was younger, about like when I studied history. And I went to, a place like church, and at church sometimes they talk about people who are evil. And then I can remember this is actually the anniversary of 9/11, and then we had a president who spoke about evildoers, and that was like a big thing for a period of time. My wife, she just bought a book on Amazon. Something about like how to heal your mind. It's a real popular book. A friend referred it to her. I can't remember the exact title of it, but something about how to free yourself from like difficult, toxic thoughts or people. And so she asked me, she's like, "Could you get me this book?" And I ordered it for her. I was like, "Oh yeah, it looks like a good book." And I picked, when it came in the mail, I picked it up and I opened it to the just middle of the book, and I read something that was quite nice and quite beautiful about not believing your thoughts. It just had a Christian slant on it. Now, my wife, on the other hand, she started with the introduction, and the introduction, this author went on some kind of rant about how she was teaching a workshop and someone showed up to one of her workshops who was evil and who was possessed by the devil and who started screaming at her workshop, and she had to call security. And that's the moment she realized that there were evil people in the world. And so there's all these ideas about evil. You read the Bible, you read some of the ancient texts, and it talks about like this war of good versus evil. And like that's one model of looking at the world. But when we think that this world is a world, like some superhero movie of like good versus evil, things can get really nutty very quickly. Very quickly. If we believe in evil, basically we believe that there's somewhere where the truth and the intelligence of God is not. If we believe in evil, we believe that God is not omnipotent, and that God is not omnipresent. But again, like I've had to really sit with this question deeply. Earlier this year, I listened to a podcast by Jocko Willink. I listen to all kinds of stuff. I like to get just to listen to all kinds of different people's lives. And Jocko, for those of you who don't know, he's a Navy SEAL, and he was a Navy SEAL for many years. And he toured in Iraq and Afghanistan. He read this woman's story. She lived in Afghanistan, and she was an she was an Afghani woman, and the Taliban entered her village and basically killed all the men and took all the women of age and put them in like a house. And the Taliban men and Taliban boys had their way with these women. And this woman, he read basically a letter that he had of hers, or a story from one of her books or something. It was the most horrific thing. Like I could barely listen. I had to turn it off like 4 times. I couldn't handle, how horrific it was. And the conclusion I think that the woman came to, and that Jocko came to, was that there are evil people in this world. And from the perspective of Jocko, like they need to be stopped, they need to be killed, they need to be destroyed. And this is in a sense, like, of course, how a warrior with a certain level of emotional intelligence might respond to a situation. And that may be the appropriate response. If someone comes into your home, into your life, and they're attacking you physically, and if they're hurting you, hurting your children, hurting your sister, your brother, whatever, it's like, by all means, God gave us hands and fists to fight back. Now, we can't always do that. So God gave us also legs. And so sometimes we need to run. Sometimes we need to fight. Sometimes we need to run. Sometimes we need to call the police. It's probably a good place to start if we're in the Western world here. If we were good Buddhist monks, we can just pray, and meditate. But if you look at what happened to Tibet, it's it's pretty horrific. The Tibetans didn't really defend themselves. They sat back and let their country be taken. I mean, they were probably going to be destroyed anyways, but we always have the choice to fight. And for some reason, in modern day spirituality and ancient spirituality, we took that off the table to fight. So someone's asking me, well, what do we do? But I'm going to really hone in on this word evil. Because often what we don't understand, like when someone is doing something, when someone is harming us, it's easy for us to go unconscious and simply to label that evil. I think confused is more appropriate term. I like to understand, what it is that cause people to do such dreadful acts here on planet Earth. And so I'm going to start by being a good Buddhist. And we'll talk about being a good warrior later on. But as a good Buddhist, we actually understand. Once when I was a high school teacher, I actually taught a class about the Taliban. It was like the birth of the Taliban. So I was curious, like, who were these people? And why were they committing these horrific acts? Like, what was it about them? And when I studied the Taliban, very quickly I saw like the Taliban were just a bunch of young children. They were children of a different war, a war that the Afghanis had with the Soviets. And so a lot of these children were refugees, and their fathers were killed in the war with the Soviets, or the war before, the war with the Americans. So, and a lot of these kids ended up in these schools right on the border of Pakistan, like in the mountains of Afghanistan and Pakistan. And there were some of the schools were these big schools. They were called madrasas, I believe. And basically, these schools just gathered up a bunch of orphan children and indoctrinated them in a very fundamentalist understanding of Islam. And so if you have a bunch of traumatized children who grew up without parents, and you throw them into a school that indoctrinates them also about good and evil, this righteous way to live, that's a recipe for something disastrous. And that's who's taken over modern day Afghanistan. It's quite unfortunate. I think before the Soviets came, Afghanistan was actually in a place of great growth and education. It's a pretty safe society. It's a pretty incredible country, in the 60s and the 70s, before the Soviets entered. And so it's important for us to understand that when people harm us, it is because that individual, whoever it is, for one reason or another, is fundamentally disconnected from their heart. They're disconnected from their heart, and often they're disconnected from their power, their truth. And when we're disconnected from our heart and we're disconnected from our power, we tend to act like an animal here on planet Earth. We tend to do vicious things or manipulative things or bullying things or violent things, aggressive things, destructive things, hateful things. You can't be in your heart and hate. It's like impossible to be in your heart and to hate. When someone says they feel hatred in their heart, what they're really saying is they feel disconnected from their heart and disconnected from their power. So it's important to understand that there are these people in the world. There are these people in the world. And so Tracy asks, well, how do we respond to people in the world like this? Like, what do we do? Like, what do we do with people who prey upon us? When someone preys upon us, should we sit back and simply pray for them while they are preying upon us? Like, that would be one way of responding. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. I recommend fighting, running, getting connected with your power, and doing anything you can to fight against these individuals. Fight, resist, leave the situation, Again, call the police. This is a question of practicality. A practicality, you get in touch with your power. Whether your power is your cell phone and calling the police, whether your power is you saving money and then, finally getting enough money to move out of the situation if you're in relationship with them, moving geographically, or just moving your legs, using your hands. But often, like what this question is really about is a question of faith. Question of what type of world is this? And far too often I've seen individuals on the path do a little equation in their head, and the equation goes something like this. If there is evil, well, I'll back up. I see bad things in the world, and because I see bad things, there must be evil. If there is evil, there must not be a God. And then because of that, they lose complete and total faith in the path, in this world. And then they fall into a state of despair. So Tracy, if this is you, I don't know if that is you, but if this is you, I encourage you not to have faith in evil, not to have faith in the power of the person abusing you, but rather to have faith in your own strength. To have faith in your own strength and your ability to change the situation. And sometimes changing the situation again means changing the environment. And I encourage you to call upon God to help you connect to your strength, to your power, to your choice, to your options, to help you find a way out of this situation, to give you the strength to run, to fight, to flee, to stand up, to speak up. And to change the course of the situation. And my heart goes out to you. My heart goes out to all people who are preyed upon. This is one of those things where I have found myself many of night looking up at God saying, what the hell type of world is this? Like, what are you doing to us down here, Lord? What are you doing to us? But when I come into the depth of my being, I see very clearly this is simply an evolutionary world. And in an evolutionary world, there are all layers, levels of evolution present. I've told too many stories this summer about alligators, but I'll just say it again. I can walk 200 feet from my home and find giant dinosaurs in my neighborhood, literally. By giant dinosaur, I mean, 10, 12-foot alligator. It was over in the pond, the lake, the swamp, the wetlands, in my neighborhood. And so I'm living in a place where there are dinosaurs, like among us people. And I can say that yesterday, as I drove through a city, I drove through Savannah, I saw a giant cage where, it's a jail where they put human beings who misbehave. And so here on planet Earth, we have all forms of evolution. And then we also have this other thing. It's just in life, like in this realm of biology, there are people who are born or who develop mental illness. But mental illness isn't evil. just as people who are disconnected from their hearts and who've been traumatized greatly and didn't have mothers and fathers who take care of them and teach them, how to be kind, how to be loving, how to share. Like, we live in a world where not everyone grew up with two parents who loved them and supported them and who were there for them and taught them. Sometimes we just need parents to teach us boundaries, to keep our arms and our legs to ourselves. We live in a world where there is trauma, and those who've been traumatized the most and who've been educated the least, and maybe sprinkle in, some mental illness or drug abuse, and these types of things, and socioeconomic factors. And, no education around morality. Again, just a disconnection from the heart. And it creates a recipe for deeply confused, disturbed individuals. And because of this, it is important as a human being here on planet Earth that we are aware of this and that we know how to respond. That we know how to respond. And so, Tracy, again, like, I'm not sure if we've met before, but this question could go a variety of different ways. It could simply be that you need to stand up and tell the person, to get the heck out of your life, out of your yard. Maybe this is a social media thing where we just need to block someone. I've had spiritual people tell me, oh, I can't block someone. That would be mean. It's like, sure you can. Sure, you can block anyone on social media. Just do a couple clicks and you can get them out of your virtual life. Is one of the reasons we have locks on our doors, is because there's people out there who again, they're disconnected from their power, and the only way they know how to make an income is through stealing. And like, I was in Hawaii last summer, and we saw someone, like, smash a car window, steal a purse, and run off on a motorcycle. And it was like, wow, that's one way. And we were hanging out with that person the night before. It was so crazy. It was just bizarre. We were hanging out with a Hawaiian family, and the next day we saw the older brother commit this crime. It's like crazy. Like, sometimes people are crazy, but again, what does that mean? They're disconnected from their power, disconnected from their truth. And if you look into your own self, so this is where we can have compassion. When we've been disconnected from our power, you and I, have we not raised our voice, tried to bully someone, cut in line, or said something inappropriate, overstepped? Did we ever push someone in kindergarten? It's like, we've done these things. Have we ever been stressed? I can laugh and say with a smile, when I was a single father, and and I was in a ridiculous amount of debt and under tremendous stress, I thought about robbing a bank once. It moved through my consciousness. That thought floated through my consciousness. And see, when you step into Buddha nature, if you spend enough time meditating, you can find just about every thought in your consciousness. And so we don't have to, sit high on the horse thinking we are God's chosen people. We can find just about every level of consciousness within our own mind. Within our own mind. Things that could be called good, true, and beautiful, and holy, And we could also find things that someone might call evil. There's probably not too much of that in our consciousness, but there's probably times, like there's this funny thing that happens. The more the human nervous system is stressed, the more your thoughts will become animalistic. There was times last century when different people in Europe were starved, put in situations, in places in Europe where people thought about eating each other. And we could call that evil. And we could look at it from a vast view and see, no, well, this is what happens to the human psyche when you starve a human being. When you starve a human being. And so, Tracy, it's important to know that this person who's giving you such a hard time, and in one way or another, they are being starved. But that does not mean that you need to be doing business with them. It doesn't mean you need to be compassionate to them in the same household. If you're in the same house, please run, get the heck out of there. You can be compassionate from afar, so they're not harming you any longer. And so sometimes on the spiritual path, we need to study martial arts. Like that's the most healing thing for us. Sometimes we need to take a class on boundaries or getting our voice. Sometimes we need to take a class on saving our money so that we can have enough funds to get the heck out of a situation. Sometimes we need to call upon friends for help. Get some allies in the room with you. Sometimes we need to have the courage to call the police. So again, Tracy, my heart is with you. I do hope I pray there's a swift resolution for you. What is your advice to someone who wishes to successfully escape? I want you to figure out what it means to successfully escape and do just that. That's what needs to happen here. Okay. Yeah, I have another email question, but Nanette is here with a question. I just want to say one more thing, because most of us will find ourselves at some point on the path challenged with this question firsthand. And the challenge almost always is to not lose faith. That's the challenge here. To not lose faith in yourself, in your strength, in your power, not lose faith in God, in life, in the goodness of this world. To not allow darkness, darkness or confusion or chaos comes into your life. To not allow this to veil the beauty of this reality. We also don't want to be a fool either. Act like these things don't exist here on planet Earth. Again, I imagine most of us lock our doors at night. The big thing here is not to lose faith. Because often when someone comes into our life and threatens us, we completely close down and we stay closed down. And when that's the case, it will seem as if evil rules this world. It will seem as if evil is greater than goodness. It will seem as if evil is greater than God. And I encourage you, if you're, in a dangerous situation, by all means, do whatever you need to do to protect yourself. And then as soon as you get out of there, open up to the glory and the goodness of this world. Open to the glory and goodness of this world again. Okay. Let's hear from Nanette. Hi, Nanette.
Hey, good to see everyone.
Yeah, good to see you.
My internet might be a little jittery. I'm on a satellite, but I just wanted to share that since the retreat, I've been just letting go of so much. And I have come to this recognition that I really had no idea how to deeply receive.
Yeah.
And I think there's this ancient wound of deeply disconnecting from the mother, and it feels like it is an archetypal wound that I carry and seems pervasive on this planet right now. And there was just this like experiencing that place of desolation within myself that has felt so utterly disconnected from the nurturance of the mother.
Yeah.
And it feels like that recognition in and of itself is showing me how to receive again. But I was just wondering if you could speak to that wound, and how we might learn how to kind of receive beyond the idea of it, but kind of regain that connection that's seemed to be lost a really long time ago for me.
Yeah. So I'll say this, and I don't know if this is true for you, but for most people, when they have trouble receiving from the Divine Mother, it's because they have a wound with their own human biological mother. So that's one of the great reasons. The second reason is, a lot of our spiritual traditions are very masculine based. Like the mother aspect of the religion or the spirituality was stripped out of it, normally by some confused man is what I'll say. Who probably had an issue with his mother. And sometimes the issue is I mean, I can say, just like in a funny way, for any Star Wars fans out there, like, this is the story of Anakin Skywalker. It's like he was taken away from his mother at a young age, and so he fell to the dark side of the Force. Like, these things happen. These things happen where we do these equations, like I was speaking about before. If there is, something bad in the world, if there's something evil in the world, therefore there is no God. We do the same thing if we have bad parents, or confused parents, or parents who weren't able to be perfect, saintly human beings. And that's almost everyone. And so if mom is confused in the way she parents us, what we do as children oftentimes is we shut down. We say it's not safe to receive from her. And then we just project that onto God. And it's not safe to receive from God. It's not safe to receive from life. And so there the story goes. And, the job of any good spirituality is to lift our veils, to break down the walls of anything that disconnects us from God, from life, from our own heart. And And so it's important to investigate this, just to look like, is it easy for me to receive? Like, is it easy for me to say the word divine mother? Like when people have struggle saying divine mother or divine father, like we don't need to make the divine father wrong, because what men have done with religion here on planet Earth. Can we receive from both? But in order to receive, often it takes courage. It takes courage. So like the first thing Nanette's speaking about is like we have to look and see, like, do we have this wound? Do we have a wound? And if we do have a wound around receiving, it's like, why? Like, what is that about? And can we ask the question, like, do I want to continue to hold on to this wound? Because most of us, we hold on to our wounds as a way to psychologically defend from being hurt again. The problem with, like shutting ourselves, like holding on to a wound, say, of the divine feminine or just the feminine or just the mother, is if we hold on to the wound that we have with our own mother, like say she didn't provide for us, we broadcast that onto the world, project that onto the world. No one will provide for us. That puts you in a very isolated, desolate place. And then the ego says, aha, I know what to do. I have to do it all myself. And I read this story about this man, and he was a king or a prince or something, and he left his family and he did it all by himself, and he woke up and he became enlightened. That's the way to do it. And he didn't talk about God because God is bad. And it's like, if people do this whole song and dance, and to me, it is just, it's ridiculously silly. It's like the whole time, the Divine Mother is wanting nothing more than to shower you with love and grace. And you're like, nope, 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 I'm going to do it all by myself, all by myself. And the more we choose to do that, the more isolated and alone we become. And people oftentimes, when they're studying Buddhism, this is the shadow of Buddhism, by the way, one of the shadows, but people, they study Buddhism in a way where they're becoming fiercely more and more independent, alone, and isolated. It's like the complete opposite of oneness. It's like, I am going to be an island unto myself, just completely isolated. And I'm going to do this all with my willpower. And after 30 years or so doing that, they wonder, why is this not working? Why am I so angry and grumpy and agitated? And why does my heart feel so numb and dead? And then often the next drift is they drift into nihilism, where life is meaningless. So human beings were gifted with a heart. And a heart's job is to give and receive love. It's very hard to give love if you don't know how to receive. And so it's important. It's important to know, just like these basic mantras. It's like Allahu Akbar. What does that mean? God is great. Jaya Skanda, what does it mean? God is great. God is great. God is good. God is holy. And God is here to serve you, to shower you with light, with love, with hope, with kindness, with compassion, with strength. And as human beings, we had this whole talk just a moment ago about good and evil and being confused in the world. I've been so utterly confused in this world. And yet there's this silent force that comes to me and just silently, gently, ever so tenderly course corrects me. I get a little off, but because I'm open, this force comes into me and just gently corrects me, steers me onto the sunlit path. The sunlit path is a path of grace, the path where you're held, you're loved, you're supported. You're held and loved and supported. It's a path where you're walking toward unity and communion. I think a lot of people have forgotten what communion is. They think of it as a little biscuit they get at church. Communion is you coming into the heart, the presence, and when you use this word, the bosom of the Divine Mother. That's what communion is. In order to do this, we have to be humble. We have to be humble. We have to admit there is a force greater than me. And we have to be courageous and open to that force and just see what happens when I open. Oh, I'm filled with love and forgiveness and compassion and strength. But it takes a little courage to open and see for yourself. It takes a little bit of courage, a lot of humility. And it's very easy to say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to rely on my own thinking mind, because my mind is safe and my mind is strong and my mind knows the way. But after you live a little bit, you see your mind isn't safe. Most of us, our minds are crazy. And our minds aren't that strong. We get confused so easily, and our minds don't know the way. Don't know the way. I was going to go to a concert tonight. One of my favorite bands, and one of their lyrics, I just love this lyric. It says, I change my mind so much I can't even trust myself. My mind changes me so much I can't even trust. It's just like, it just goes back and forth. It's like, who's the I, who's the mind? It's always changing itself. It's always shape-shifting. And we see that our own mind is clueless about how to live here on planet Earth. It's normally at that point where we fall on our knees and we say, okay, show me the way. And I don't care if you call that the Divine Mother, the Divine Father, Allah, Buddha, Mother Mary, whatever. It doesn't make a difference. It's this willingness to receive, to open your heart and to receive something greater than yourself. And we could even call this being a scientist. Like every scientist starts with a theory, but they have to be willing to open and receive something greater if they want to receive something new. And so for me, just as a kid, I just would open, I don't care to who, the sky, to the Christ, to Jesus, to Mary, just whoever it was, I would just open. I would just see what happened. I go to a Catholic church and open to Mary. What would happen? I would feel profound innocence and holiness. Say, yeah, it's pretty good. I'll have some more. I'll have some more. I was going to walk out of there and think that I know better than Mary. So part of it is just knowing who the boss is, being humble enough to have a boss, being humble enough to bow before a creator, despite what your parents did to you. And that's the thing, is like, your parents are human. Like when I'd go to church, I wouldn't listen to the priest. I would see him as a human. But I would open my heart and I would receive the grace of the temple. Any temple you step into is just a conduit of grace. And I don't care what temple it is. I've been to all kinds of temples. The last great temples I was in was a giant mosque, and just filled with so much love. I said, yes, I'll have some of this. I have lots of this. I'll drink it up. I'll soak it up. I'm greedy in this department. And I encourage you to be the same. But most of us are greedy in our attachment to our own thinking mind and thinking we know better. And again, it makes perfect sense. It's like, yeah, the only one we can trust is ourself. But then at some point we have to ask, like, is that actually true? Like, am I the only one I can trust? The mind may say, Mom hurt me greatly. If I can't trust her, who can I trust? I don't know. Maybe God, maybe Mary, maybe a different mother, a different mother figure, maybe a teacher, maybe a professor. And the question becomes, well, how do I trust? If you walk into a situation and you feel into your heart and you feel into your belly, and you get a yes, then you open. Then you open. And by all means, opening to God, it is a very small gamble. Very small gamble. But some people are terrified of this. And some people do make this mistake where they try to guard themselves from actually being real with God. And so they never attempt to connect with God because they're afraid they're going to be let down. And it is absolutely true that if you try to connect to God through your thinking mind, you will be absolutely let down. The same way, if you started speaking Russian to me and I tried to speak back Russian, you're going to be let down. Like I'm going to be let down. We're not going to be able to talk. God doesn't talk through the mind. God speaks to us through our heart. When you're speaking to God, you receive God. You receive the mother through your heart, through your body. I'll take it a step further. Because the presence of the mother holds us, all of us. And the beautiful thing that I love about the mother so much is she holds every aspect of us, the good, the bad, the ugly, the quote unquote evil, the mentally ill, the disturbed aspects of our being. The Divine Mother will hold all of that. All of you. The emotional, the hysterical, the angry, the vengeful, the rage. She's willing to hold it all. And for those of you, the non-dual police in the room, there's this funny thing that happens. The closer you get to the Divine Mother, the more fully you give yourself to her, the more fully you become her. You become her. Literally, you become her. Her heart becomes your heart. Her essence becomes your essence. Her love becomes your love. Her compassion becomes your compassion. And then there's this beautiful merging of her into you, you into her, to where at some point you can't even tell the difference. Is this her? Is this me? Is this life? And so the whole point of the spiritual path is to open and to receive that which is greater than you. And through that, you discover the true you. what the mother created you to be. And so the mantra for this type of path is to breathe, to feel, to open, to receive what's here. And by all means, like, don't be shy to ask, Mother, will you come into me? Will you come into my heart? Will you hold me? Will you nurture me? Come into the places that feel like a barren desert. Come into the places that feel as if they've been ridiculously traumatized. Come into the places that have felt orphaned. And Mother, I invite you to pick up the baby within me and hold her, love her, flood her with your light. And so anyways, beautiful, Nanette. Thank you for sharing yourself with us. Yeah. 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 Beautiful. This is a mother lineage for those of you who haven't figured that out yet. And people get real tripped up around genitalia and all that kind of stuff. And I don't like to get too tripped up about that. Yes, I am a fella. And I teach a mother path, the path of the divine mother, the absolute devotion. I don't care, what gender you are, how you orient this or that. Open and receive. All of us need this. So if you find yourself isolated, alone, struggling, wanting love, wanting support, if you find yourself feeling deficient in any way, courageously open your heart and allow yourself to be held and nurtured in this light. In this light. Beautiful. Okay, let's hear from Chrissy. Chrissy, are you here?
Hi, Craig.
Hi, Chrissy.
I am. Recently, you said that you mimicked the life of your teacher. Can you talk about what you did to mimic him?
Yeah.
Please. Thank you.
Yeah. I did what he did. Like literally. What did I do? If he was meditating 4 hours a day, I meditated 4 hours a day. If he read this book, I read this book. If he said this chant, I said this chant. The big ways I mimicked him, those were the outer ways. But the big way I mimicked him is I watched his psychology and how he was in the world and how he responded. And I mimicked him. This will sound strange. Through allowing myself to be absorbed into his presence. I allowed myself to be absorbed into his presence. And so, this actually relates to what Nanette was speaking about before about receiving. It's like whenever you go to school, if you go to school and you're humble, you have to make your mind silent as the student. So you make your mind silent. And then you receive the presence of the teacher, the professor, and you receive them fully. Fully. And that's what I did. Just showed up at my teacher's house like every day at like 7:30 or 8 a.m. and sometimes 6 a.m. And I brought none of Craig there. I just made Craig empty. And I received all of him. And I did this with my root teacher, David, but I did this with any teacher, any great teacher I studied with. Yeah, and so I did the same thing. Like when I was studying with Adya, I go see Adya. There was a retreat, satsang, wherever. I just made myself empty. And I received the fullness of his presence. I did this when I studied with Lama Soltram. I made myself empty and received the fullness of her presence. I let their presence enter me totally. So I became absolutely receptive to what was there. I merged into them. Now, many of us, we do this actually, like most everyone knows how to do this when they're with a lover. Like when you meet someone for the first time, like you fully receive their beauty, their goodness, their divinity. You receive them fully. You let them enter you. You merge with them. You commune with them. And like with my teacher, there was something so good there. I was like, yeah, like we don't need much of Craig here. I'll take all of this. I'll take all of this. And so, and it's funny, I told these stories often, but his students were a lot older than me. Normally, like, they all had like 2 or 3 decades on me. So, I was, let's say 20 and they were 50 or 60. And they used to comment too. I mean, they were just like they just look at me. They're like, oh my God, like you're so much like him, is what they'd say to me. And it wasn't, like I said that thing in the beginning that I was mimicking, but what I really did was I just made myself silent. And I received the fullness of him. And again, like the same thing I'm speaking about with the Divine Mother, you make yourself silent, humble, open, and you receive what's here. Now, if we're doing this, if we circle back to the first question with the evil cult leader, this is going to end terribly. It's like if you're with, and so you want to make sure you trust the person first. You want to make sure they're psychologically sound first. And, you always want to have some level of discernment. If not, like people can get themselves in trouble real quick. Especially women, I'll say that just because they've been so taken advantage of by male teachers. But like if you trust the person, like if it seems that they are good and you have just a little bit of discernment, we can play this game of just opening and fully receiving. And then you allow what you're receiving to move through you, to live through you. To live through you. Christian mystics often teach about this, that the Christ living through them. You open so fully to the Christ that the Christ lives through you. It lives through you. And I can say, this morning, I just have to say this out loud. Mercury is in retrograde. It went in retrograde like 2 days ago. And so communication has been off all of a sudden. And this morning, my wife and I, we woke up and we kind of had a late night because my mother and my aunt are in town visiting. And my daughter, we signed her up for horse camp and horse, I don't know what you call it. She gets to go ride a horse. She's learning to ride a horse. And so my wife thought it was next weekend. And I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, it's this weekend. It's right now. Like the class is starting in 20 minutes. So I was like, hollering at my daughter. We were racing out the door, and it's very expensive. I was like, I don't want to screw this up. It's the first time. And so we all jumped in the car and I brought my daughter to this horse stable. And my daughter's really tired, and she can be, she has a really strong will. She fights with her mom a bunch. But as soon as I brought her into the stable, and like the guy running the place, we'll call him like the head cowboy, she just looked at him and she opened to his presence, and he gave her a brush, and he said, he just bent down to her and he said, take this brush and I want you to brush, the horse like this. And I knew she was pretty terrified just being in front of a big horse like that and something new. But she picked up that brush and she did exactly what she was told. And she opened to the presence, of this cowboy. She opened to the presence of the stable. She opened to the presence of, like, I want to call it, like, every place has like a group think to it. And she just fell right into alignment with what was there. And she brushed the horse. And then, then he told her, how to put the saddle on. And she helped with that. And then he told her how to hold the reins. And she got up on the horse and she did exactly as she told. And she just fell right into alignment. Then his wife came out and, led like 6 little girls, and every single one of them listened, and they followed every single rule. They didn't fight. They didn't resist. They didn't put up a fuss. They all just did exactly as what was being told and presented to them. And there was something really beautiful about it. And she had so much fun because of that. Because of that, she fell into the vibration of the place. And the vibration of the place was, we're going to teach little girls how to ride horses. We're going to teach them how to trot. We're going to show them a good time. But because they could just put all of their resistance, all their sleepiness, again, this was like 8 a.m. or it was 9 a.m. on a Sunday morning. And I saw like all these girls were half asleep, when they walked into this, as they were getting out of the car. But as soon as they walked in that stable, it's like, boom, something came online. And that's the thing, like how I was with my teacher. I just knew like this was I'm just going to use this word, it's like a no nonsense, no bullshit world. Like there was no screwing around with my teacher. You step onto that land and you know who you are and what your life is about. Like you're not, head in the clouds. You're not, this is before cell phones, but like I couldn't even imagine having a cell phone in my hand walking up to my teacher. It's like, no, there was not going to be any of that. And so when you find something great, I'm from the school of thought. When you find something great, you give yourself to that. You give yourself to that. But most people don't do that. They want to just go taste something great and continue to be their own egoic self. But I knew very clearly, if I want to wake up, what am I waking up? Like, what's waking up here? I'm waking up out of Craig and into something greater. I'm waking up. I mean, it was hilarious. If any of you saw me when I first met my teacher, I was like, I was the biggest punk. I had dreadlocks. I was like a skater, a hippie. It was just like disaster, disaster of a human being. But there was something in me that wasn't, that silliness of a teenage boy. There was something in me that could recognize there's something great here. And so I said, okay, yeah, I'll take something greater than what's here. I'm willing to put myself on the altar to receive the grace of God, to receive this thing called enlightenment. And so if we truly want this, we give of ourselves. And for most of us, it's funny, when I watch people on the path, most people, they kind of hate themselves, like despise themselves, and then are ridiculously attached to that thing. And it's just like, this is some really bad math here. Like, you don't like yourself, but then you're attached to it. And for me, it wasn't that I didn't like myself. It's more, I just knew, like, there's a much greater way to be than how I am in this moment. Because I looked inside, again, I didn't hate myself, but I just looked inside and said, this mind that I have is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Like, this mind and my emotional nature is crazy. There's got to be a greater way to live. And God gave me this gift of a teacher who was something quite extraordinary. I said, okay, yeah, like, I like that. I want to step into that vibration. And if that means I have to let go of this one, yeah, I can do that. I can do that. What people don't realize on the spiritual path is, like, when people are attached, like, we forget the trade that we're doing is you're trading up. You're trading in an old car. It's not working so good. And we're getting the new model, the one that works, the one that is sane, the one that is happy, the one that is healthy. You're trading in the old clunker that's broken down for that which is greater. And so when we're attached, it's important to really look, like, do I need to be attached to this thing called me? Do I need to be attached to self-hatred? Do I need to be attached to unworthiness? Like, should I be attached to unworthiness? Should I be attached to addiction? Should I be attached to me being right? Me being right, like a lot of people. Should I be attached to being guarded and defended when you're around something really safe and good? Like with the first question tonight, it's like, by all means, please be guarded and defended. But in this question, it's like, when you're around something good, and if it is something true and good, we don't need to be guarded and defended. In fact, the more guarded and defended we are, the more stuck we'll become. The further away from the truth we will be, the further from our heart we will be, the further from what's good for us will be, the further from quote unquote enlightenment or spiritual awakening will be. But my God, do people want to hold on to things they don't want? It's so bizarre to me. Why do we hold on to things we don't want? Things that don't work. It's like, these couples hold on to being right. Like, I need to be right. It's like, why? Why? Do you want to be right, or do you want to be in love? Like, I would much rather be in love than be right. I'd much rather be in God than be some real, stern, independent human being who does everything by himself. Like, again, like, yes, humans are pretty silly. So anyways, beautiful question, Chrissy. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. open and receive. Could have been the short answer. That's how I mimicked my teacher. I opened and received. Okay. Hi, Craig. I had such a beautiful retreat with you all. But since then, every time I meditate, the whole body is really tense, even in my head. I do what you said, and I hold myself and breathe love into the body, and I'm still doing yin yoga every day, and I've had a massage, but I'm so tense, and the body is aching. Is this common on the path? Is there anything else I could do? And then she writes in parentheses, my kundalini woke 16 months ago. Yeah. So, okay, I could say it's possible that your kundalini has woke up and it's raging through your body and it needs a little bit more time. Maybe a couple more months, maybe a year or two. I hope not, but maybe a couple more months for it just to work through your body and for your body to get used to it, to get comfortable with it. Sometimes these things take time. It sounds like you're doing everything right. But there is this funny thing that happens, and it happens when we meditate, and it also happens when we go to therapy for the first time. Is sometimes when you step into a therapy office, like you may feel pretty, let's say, maybe not A-okay, but we'll call it B-okay, like you're feeling kind of all right. And the therapist helps you to uncover some old trauma. And boy, every time you walk into that office, you're having to face that trauma and the body feels tense. You're crying and you're like, oh my God, this is terrible. I have all this old painful trauma within me. And that may go on for 3 months, 6 months if you don't quit therapy. The same is true with meditation. If you don't quit meditation, like sometimes people are a little bit anxious and they begin to meditate. And after a couple months of meditating, they realize, oh my God, I am really anxious. There's something really wrong with me. But some people could make the mistake of blaming meditation or blaming the therapist. It's like, no. The therapist's job, the job of awareness, the job of meditation is to open you to what's here. That's step one, is to open to what's here. And so if we're just opening, you might find yourself becoming more and more tense while you're meditating, while you're going to therapy, when you meet or talk with someone like me. But after a period of time, you're going to feel this pressure of the tension beginning to release, beginning to empty out. You're going to find yourself feeling more spacious, more empty, more free, more full of light and love. But sometimes these things take time. Now, we could choose to be an unconscious person and say, I'm just going to take this thing to the grave. I'm going to take it with me to the grave. I'm not going to face any of this stuff. I'm going to take it to the grave. And some people, I've watched people literally make that choice. And sometimes I've worked with some individuals and they were in the final stages of life. And they're like, nope, nope. I'm just going to take it to the grave. And you don't have to. It's hard to face these things within you. But I'll tell you this, it's a hell of a lot easier than carrying them with you to a whole nother lifetime. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. And so, my dear, please keep going forward, continue opening. Sounds like you're doing everything right. You know, the only thing I would add to this is like sometimes if the body is really tense, sometimes we need to do meditation and some exercise to get out and like really run the body, move the body, shake, some of this tension out of you. So sometimes if we're doing meditation and yin yoga, that's really great in helping us to open. But sometimes we might have to do some vigorous yoga or exercising to actually expel and help move some of this energy if it's getting stuck. Yvonne, I think another thing that can be helpful is if you had some more concentrated support from someone like me. I think you reached out to me a while ago asking about a session. But yeah, it'd be good if you and I met. It'd be good if you met with a support person of some sort. It'd be good if you brought, your question live, to Satsang or to the Kundalini group. Yeah, I think that could be helpful. Okay. Sometimes I'd be really stuck on the path, and I just bring my question to my teacher. And sometimes my question was so utterly confused, but just being in his presence was just like something began to move, and the whole thing would shift. And I don't even know what happened, but somehow I felt a lot better. The energy was no longer stuck. And that's one of the gifts of when you work with a teacher who is transmitting. Sometimes my teacher would say all kinds of crazy things that didn't make any sense to me, but it was just through him speaking that the energy of my body would change. I asked him about this later, and he said, yeah, the words, they're really irrelevant. They're really irrelevant. What's important is that you're here and you're in this vibration. You're in this flow of grace. Yes. And so beautiful. And so nice to be with all of you this evening. I want to invite us just to close our eyes, to feel into our hearts the love and the beauty of our hearts, to feel into the quiet strength and power, the resilience of Buddha nature in the belly. Breathing in and breathing out. Softening, opening, and trusting. Softening, opening, and trusting. Okay. So nice to be with you all. We'll see you soon.